Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. And can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Okay, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? And we'll just, Councillor Stourbridge, just you can hit your mic. You just wanted to move your item up?
Yeah, because some of the councillors, including myself, may have to leave by 2 at the latest. I know Councillor Armstrong said he has to leave at 1, and I have a hard stop at 2.
Okay, well, we'll just watch that item, but we'll drive hard to 1 o'clock, and we'll pull that item up before. Okay, we'll pull that up.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Yes,
thank you. Okay, thank you. And sorry, just trying to get my package. There we are. Sorry, thank you. And can I have a motion to approve the minutes from August the 27th, please? Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. And the next item is our Growing in St. John presentation. I would just like to give a couple of updates just before we turn it over to Mr. Willett for an introduction. A couple of things related to immigration and population growth in St. John. This has been something that this council has and this growth committee has put a tremendous amount of emphasis on since we came into office in May of 2016 with our council's priorities, the roadmap for smart growth, an action-oriented document, the population growth strategy. Most recently, we have, as you know, our Succeed and Stay project that we've been working on, not only on attracting, but also, most importantly, retaining newcomers to our community. Wanted to just give you a quick highlight, members of committee and to the gallery and those watching at home. Just this weekend alone, the events that took place, we had the 2nd annual Cultural Fest. So this was an event that was put on by St. John Newcomers Centre with all of the other groups and agencies involved. It was put on at TD Station. There were over 2,000 people attended over the weekend. It was an absolutely spectacular event. It showcased our city, which is becoming immensely diverse. At one point, we had everyone come up onto the stage, and we took this most amazing picture. I'll circulate it around to make sure you've seen it. And we had, for example, we now have 40 Egyptian families living in St. John. We have a very strong Chinese community in St. John. We have a very strong Syrian communities in St. John, an Indo-Canadian community in St. John. So we are diversifying, and this was an excellent event to showcase a variety of cultures and diversity that's happening here. So congratulations to everyone that put that event on. It was wonderful. In addition to that, yesterday, the city and its partners hosted a 2nd annual Thanksgiving Day Mixer Thanksgiving dinner for international students. There were 115 students that participated, and again, students from all over the world who came together through the Canadian tradition of Thanksgiving, and we learned about all kinds of other traditions in other parts of the world. And thank you to everyone that put that on, our growth and population team, David and Jennifer and Omar, and all the others that were involved. And again, it's a team approach here. The YMCA, Prude, our local immigration partnership, all of those folks were there yesterday. The next thing that we've got happening is we have an immigration survey happening. So as part of the population growth framework, the city and the local immigration partnership is launching the city's first immigration survey today. This will allow the city and our partners to learn what immigrants think of our community, how to better align our programs and services, and how to successfully attract and retain more newcomers to our community. The survey is open to all immigrants living in Greater St. John who are 19 years or older, and it doesn't matter if an immigrant has been here for 5 days or 50 years. It's a permanent or temporary resident, a student, or a Canadian citizen. We want to hear from them. The survey is available online at www.stjohn.ca/immigration. And that is very important information for us. And lastly, we're off to Toronto this week for a recruitment mission happening Friday and Saturday. We'll be hosting a St. John networking event for expats to stay connected to the city on Friday. And we'll be participating in a very large job fair with thousands of newcomers on Saturday. The last time we did this, JD Irving alone, had over 30, I think the number was 30 35 new in total between employees and family members moved to St. John. So these missions matter, and we're going up with employers to this newcomers mission on Friday and Saturday of this week. So just a few highlights of some of the activities over the last week. So we'll move on to our first presentation today. It's a Growing in St. John presentation, and I would ask Phil, Mr. Willett, to introduce, please.
Through your worship, as everyone knows, we have this Growing in St. John segment, and it's an opportunity to celebrate. It's an opportunity to see what's happening on the ground. We're in a meeting space, and we don't always have the opportunity to connect with individuals that are part of this Growing in St. John mindset that is taking hold. And we thought it would be very important to have at least one person come in every meeting to start us off. And today I'm very excited to have G. Lee with us today. G. Lee was educated at University of New Brunswick and graduated in 2006. He's a certified immigration consultant. We have connected with G over the years. He has been awarded the St. John Young Entrepreneur in 2007. He's lived here for 17 years, and he has a very, I believe, important story to tell. And he lives here with his family in St. John, and we're really happy to have you today here with us, G. And please go up to the podium and share with us your story. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for Mr. Olet. Just because you're under Jennifer's referral, so I can have the opportunity to be here. So, Mr. Mayor and the city councilors, it is my great honor to be here to share my stories about St. John. So, my name is Ji Li. I'm originally from China. I arrived into St. John in 2002. And I graduated from UNB BA program in 2006. And I started my own business from the same year. So right now, I'm doing immigration business as a licensed immigration consultant. And of course, I bring the new immigrants from other countries to our country, our province, and our city. So right now, I'm a citizen of Canada. I feel really proud about that. So all my family members live in St. John. My family, my wife, my daughter, and my brother's family, even for my parents. Just Jennifer reminded me. So because right now I'm applying for the permanent resident status for my parents. So I believe next year we will add 2 citizens of St. John. My parents will be here. So, but for my parents, they live here several months every year, stay with us. So I'm 39 years old now. Almost half of my lifetime spent in St. John. So all my family, education, working, and everything are in St. John. So I have roots here. I just mentioned with Mr. Mayor, my father was mayor in China as well, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Right now he's retired. So I asked him a question before. What is the best thing you did in your lifetime? I thought the answer should be something about like education, his career, or some kind of honor or something. But his answer was sending you to St. John, because my father is a really big fan for our city. He likes our city. And of course, he wants to live here forever. So I also asked him about why you like St. John so much. Not from visitors or guests' perspective, it's from a previous mayor's perspective. So he listed a long list for me, for example, like the professional government and the advanced education, the developed economy, the friendly people, and even for our mayor, he said he's very handsome and really professional. Yes, it's true, it's true. And my father asked me about why the mayor is so handsome and so young. I said, oh, maybe a kind of tradition of St. John, maybe. Yes. So I totally agree with him, of course. But I have my own opinion or idea about St. John. Why I love the city? Just because the city gives me the feeling of home. I traveled to many cities, from China to Canada, even some other countries. But St. John is the only city gives me the home feeling. So every time when I fly from other cities or countries back to St. John, when I saw the lights on the airport, I always feel safe and comfortable. Oh, I'm home here. Even I back to China, I still feel it's another country, not my place. St. John is the only place belongs to me. So I have two reasons to say St. John gives me the home feeling. First of all, the city gives me a family. It's interesting because I met with my wife, Nancy, when I studied in UNB. We were classmates, and we fell in love, and we got married in 2006. And now we have a daughter. Her name is Bonnie. She is 7 years old, and she was born in St. John. And in her mind, St. John is the only hometown for her. She loves St. John and Canada. And you know, the favorite song for her is O Canada. So right now, she is trying hard to teach us to sing O Canada in French. But it's really difficult for me. I don't speak French. So we enjoy the life in St. John. We love here. We want to stay here forever. I always say St. John is a really successful city because its people cannot separate with it, just like me. I don't want to move to some other countries or cities. Here is my hometown. I live here. Here is my home. And secondly, St. John gives me lots of opportunity and social ties because I arrived here very young. So all my social ties are from here instead of China or some other countries or cities. So St. John is a great place for working and development. I have partners, friends, and many clients from here. So I always proudly speak to my clients and partners. I'm a businessman from St. John, New Brunswick. My business is here. I'm doing immigration. So all our clients, they will come into here, and the city grants them lots of opportunities. They can set up homes and businesses, and even like some other life plans here, because the city gives them the opportunities. Of course, it's an opportunity as well for me. And also, I have so many friends. I will say all of my friends are from here. For example, like the previous manager of Enterprise St. John, Miss Vincent Lois. She is one of our best friends, and we know each other for over 10 years, and we get together regularly, just like a family. And also like my best friend, Mr. Bill Schwartz, Chris, he is from UNB, and he is doing the same job as Jennifer did before, so recruiting international students come into our city. So we just like brother, and we can share everything. So I feel really happy because my life becomes better because I'm from St. John. I live in the city. So I feel really lucky to be a citizen of St. John. The city gives me everything I need. So this is the reason why I work so hard, because I work over 10 hours every day. So my work is about immigration, bringing the new immigrants and the newcomers to our city. I want to make St. John at home not only for myself and my family, but also for more and more people from other countries or cities. I discussed my work with Jennifer before. So within the past 10 years, we already bring over 300 new immigrant families to our city. The population is over 1,000. I feel really happy about this number. So I always tell my clients, home in St. John it's the best choice in your lifetime. Come here. You will have so many opportunities. So I think this is the return I make for the city because the city gives me so many things. And I also proud to work with David and Jennifer because they are really hardworking persons. They introduce our city to the world. And I know even for some Chinese clients, they know our city just because their work. So I want to be the same persons like they are. We want to bring more and more people to our city and set up their new homes. I strongly believe we can make it. And finally, I want to say, St. John is not only just a city's name for me, it is everything for me. The city is in my heart and in my blood. I belong to the city. I'm a part of the city. I'm a people of the city. So I will stay here forever. And now I will finish my speech here. So I want to say thank you to everyone here because you are leaders of the city. I'm from St. John. I know because your great efforts and leadership, our city become a really great place for living and working and for the new immigrants, newcomers. I'm your people, so I feel proud to have you lead our city. Thank you for your time. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Questions, colleagues? Comments? Deputy Mayor?
Well, I just want to say, we're happy that you're here in St.
Thank you.
John, and
Thank
it's
you.
your city, it's our city, so we want to do the best we can for St. John. But how do you do your work? Do you travel to China, and do you tell them about St. John? Do you get into the government in China? Or how do you, bring, or are you more
Yes.
here in St. John and you welcome newcomers when they come here?
Yes. Just because we have some partners from like China, Russia, even some Asia countries. So we submit all the information about our city to my partners and with the immigration programs of New Brunswick. So they will send the applications to me. We will process the application. And finally, if the application gets approved, the newcomers will come into here and we will welcome them in the airport.
Oh,
So
that's
this
very
is
nice.
the process. Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
continue your good work, and I wish you every success.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie?
Thank you, Worship. Thanks so much for coming in. I really enjoyed and appreciated what your presentation. So heartfelt,
Thanks.
very moving. I know the importance of having immigration to St. John over in the future coming. Is there any one thing, in your opinion, that St. John could do better, or something that we aren't doing that we could be doing to help retain the people that you're working so hard to bring here?
Yes. So I think for some new immigrants families, they come here. They not only just want to live here, so they want to find some opportunities, like working or maybe education or something. So I think because right now David and Jennifer already did great jobs to introduce our cities to them. So I think maybe in the future and we can provide more information like employment or business opportunities for them. Actually, I know lots of the organizations from our city, excellent, like Enterprise St. John. They have a special program for the newcomers. They can study how to do business in our cities. So I think this is great and important.
Okay, well,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. So, Ji Lee, thank you very much for your presentation. It was, as the councillor said, it was very much appreciated today. Your passion, your enthusiasm, but also connecting the dots for us. So, why? I'll just give a couple of examples. I mean, why did we recommend, or why did our staff teams recommend that we host a Thanksgiving dinner for international students? Because, students coming to St. John is really one of the early gateways for, just as you have explained to us today. You came here as a student, you fell in love with the community, the courage to do that. You made connections, you fell in love, you have your child, you have a career that you love. And so I'm really feeling enthused that a lot of the strategies, a lot of the actions that we're taking, you've just confirmed for us can be of great success. So thank you for that. I hope that all of the marketing brains in the rooms were listening intently to your presentation today, because I think you gave us, an entire campaign on what message to send. You left us with, things like stable government, good education, feeling at home, safe, comfortable, gives you your family lots of opportunities, building a life. You're proud of your city, and again, I think to me you've confirmed that we're having the right conversations and we're taking a lot of the right actions. And I think we're blessed to have you and your family here with us in your new home. And we really thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you so much.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a receive and file, please, colleagues? Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Okay. And next item is the market study. I just want to look. Pardon? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's what I'm just, sorry. We'll just advance Councillor Strobridge's item, just because I think once we started this presentation, we may be going over 1 o'clock a bit. So, okay, so just ask if, maybe I'll just turn it over to you, Councillor. You can just do a quick intro and then we can have some dialogue.
Perfect, thank you. So background, where this motion came from and why I brought it forward. Currently, our city, we have no protection against others that are not maintaining their personal yards and properties. There are currently no official bylaw in place to address things like not mowing lawns, cutting and maintaining trees or gardens, etc. This negatively impacts quality of life, curb appeal, negates property values, and certainly, in my opinion, does not promote a clean, well-kept city and neighborhoods. I brought it here to the Growth Committee because I believe it does negatively affect growth. And so my motion is to ask staff to create what I would refer to as a livability bylaw, to have standards put in place for both residential and commercial properties, mandating the owners to maintain them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Anything else before? I just was going to ask Ms. Hamilton maybe to speak to it, but anything else to add?
Well,
Councillor?
I didn't know that there was nothing, with all the zone SJs and plan SJs and et cetera, that there was nothing specifically about this. And because I initially spoke to our own bylaw enforcement department, and this came about as, to me personally, it came to my attention about a citizen dispute where this was happening, and I was like, there's nothing we can do.
Okay. Okay,
and
perfect.
I believe it was brought to your office as well.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah. Okay, so maybe, Ms. Hamilton, I could ask you just to speak to what we do have and if some gaps exist, and then we can have some further discussion. Okay, thank you. Sorry, let me get you, trying to, okay, go ahead, Jacqueline, that should work. Can you just hit your button again? There you go.
Okay. Your worship, through you to the councillor, certainly the city has a suite of bylaws in place today, and really under the leadership of the Growth Committee are aimed at tackling a variety of quality of life issues in the community. Certainly that would include things like the Dangerous and Vacant Buildings program, our unsightly premises bylaw that's currently being tackled through our enhanced community standards program, as well as our minimum standards bylaw and a suite of other regulatory tools that we are currently focused on. And those are really having positive, with limited resources, we have a strategic approach to implementing tackling private property issues. That certainly wouldn't get to the level, I think, that the councillor is envisioning in this current suggestion for an additional bylaw, but I think what would be an important first step is perhaps for staff to come back to the committee and provide a bit of orientation on the current suite of bylaws we have in place and some of the limited regulatory authority that we have around this as well. Certainly we are governed by provincial legislation in terms of what we can do in terms of enacting additional bylaws. And there are other sort of mechanisms that can be used beyond bylaws that we can certainly consider in tackling quality of life issues. So it would be my advice to the committee that perhaps a subsequent meeting of the committee that we do come back with a bit of an awareness and education building presentation for the committee on the current suite of bylaws we have in place to tackle quality of life and community standards issues and where some of those gaps lie and then what our authority exists to address those.
Okay, thank you. And I thank you, Ms. Hamilton. I turned a few lights off just while we were chatting. Anyone else want to make some comments? Councillor McKenzie?
Thank you, Worship. I really appreciate the thought behind this, and I understand that we have bylaws in place, and we are doing a phenomenal job in terms of vacant and dilapidated building and unsightly premises. But there's a gap. There's a gap between what Councillor Strobridge is talking about and what we're able to deal with right now. And I drove by a house the other day, a house that actually we went and cleaned up the yard and billed them for it, maybe once or twice, and I'm not sure, on Wellesley Avenue. But I went by there the other day, and there was a couple of broken bags of garbage, and it was there for a week until the absentee landlord finally showed up a week later and cleaned it up. And there's no consequence for that. So I think I'm hoping what I'm hearing is that we're able to, as a bylaw officer, a police officer drives by and sees something like that, fine them. Maybe not the first time, like, but I mean, if it's there for a week, there's got to be some way of holding them accountable for it. And we just can't keep adding stuff like that to our list of unsightly premises, because that's a whole different ballgame. That's huge amounts of garbage and, buildings that are falling down and all that sort of thing. So I think there is a gap there that needs to be filled. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Deputy?
Well, I guess, sorry. The way I looked at this is that this is sort of a bylaw, like not just unsightly premises, but further than that, like if you don't have your lawn mowed or, you have other pieces of garbage or something laying around the property. So I guess if we were to put a bylaw in like this, which I don't disagree on, we'd have to have a standard of how that would look, because everybody has an opinion on how they mow their lawn and how many flowers they plant, trees and all that stuff. So this would be sort of like a beautification bylaw to keep your, sometimes property, residential properties, people sort of get together and make sure that they can police it themselves. More than a bylaw, because I don't know how much a bylaw would do with us telling people how to mow their lawns and just what the property looked like. Anyway, I can't say it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Deputy. Councillor Hickory, did you want to jump in? Just grab your mic. Yeah, there you go.
Got some light issues here. Thank you, Worship. I think I largely agree with what folks have said around the table. I guess my one concern would be, I wouldn't want this to go too far, as I could see it, envisioning it impacting more directly those low-income folks and people living in poverty, specifically South End, Lower West Side, and their priority neighborhoods, because I know that that's where we see a lot of that. I would be supportive of something like this, but I would hope, I would like to see a bit more in it that would support it not going to that extent of directly targeting and finding those who, obviously can't afford it and are in situations that need to be dealt with, beyond simply a fine. Anyway, that's really where I stand on it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I agree with this. I like the way he brought this forward. I like the idea. I'm not a big legislative guy, more rules to follow. But I guess we do. There is a case. Have you ever driven out the old Rossay Road? And you know the house I'm talking about? 30-some years. That's what this rule is all about. Because I'd hate to live beside that guy, because my property value would be down 50%. And it's about keeping the property values. But like, there's a fine balance, and it's a hard thing for staff to do. But I mean, maybe Jacqueline can bring something forward that we have more information and a little bit more enforcement. We got to have some common sense. So Ray, thank you for bringing something like this forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Did you want to jump in?
I just have one quick question, I guess for someone in the department. Would you foresee a way to do something like this that creates more neighborhood context in terms of where this is, building a solution based on the context of that neighborhood, right? Like, obviously the context of a neighborhood, say Cedar Point compared to the Lower West Side, is a bit different.
Your Worship, through you to the councillor, certainly, I guess the questions that are coming up around this are, this would involve a whole new bylaw. And I guess the first question for committee to think about is, do you have authority to regulate these types of issues? And if so, can you set service level standards for particular areas? Those are all issues we'd have to look at. I would, I guess, raise some concerns from a resourcing standpoint. We have significant resources currently allocated to the programs directly tied to growth, and we wouldn't have capacity to introduce a whole new bylaw and program at this stage. So that's why I think it's really important for committee to see what our current programs are aimed at, and then have a discussion around where, what are the service level impacts of introducing a whole new program, because certainly I think you need to see the full picture, and that's why I would advise that Ms. Poffenroff and her team come back with a bit of an orientation and discussion around service level and authority related to this particular item.
Okay, thank you. City Manager, do you have a comment?
Your Worship, members of the committee, the challenge I have is not with the spirit of the motion, but with the wording, because at the end of the day, we as staff are held to the wording that you approve. The way it's worded right now, it talks about directing the staff to create a bylaw, which is an absolute from our perspective. We have to come back to you with a bylaw. Could I ask the committee to consider the possibility of a very slight modification of that, to direct the staff to explore the possibility of a bylaw? That would then permit us to, first of all, give you an information session on what currently exists, and then give you our thoughts and recommendations about how we might fill the gap through a bylaw, as opposed to being absolute of creating a bylaw right now.
Okay, thank you. I want to make a couple of comments, but then I'll have Deputy, are you looking to jump back in? Yeah.
Well, I just want to say it should be referred, but we also have to understand that we don't really have all the authority on somebody's personal property. If I decide I only want to mow half my lawn this week and I don't want to mow the rest, I want to do it up high, I don't think the municipality can tell me that I have to mow my lawn. Or if I don't want to plant flowers, it doesn't matter where you live in the city. A bylaw is for the whole city, and people have to have some authority on themselves, on their own personal property.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie, you had a quick
Thank
comment?
you, Worship. I guess after the comment, I'm okay with, I do want this to move forward, okay? I'm all right with looking, into what other areas are doing, but at the end of the day, I want to see the gap filled somehow, because, I want to know, for example, what does Fredericton do? You know, do they have a bylaw? Where do they get the authority? And if we have the authority to implement unsightly buildings and premises, what's the difference in having the authority to do that, but not the authority to say you have to cut your grass when it reaches 12 inches high? You know, I mean, there's just little things make a big difference. So I'm okay with changing the wording if the mover is, but I do want to see something fill that gap sooner than later. Thank you.
I just want to say one word. We have to consider the cost. The bylaw to do this is going to be enormous cost.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so just a couple of comments, and then so first of all, I think the objective that councillors brought forward here, everybody wants the same thing. I mean, it boils my blood too to drive around the city and see cars stacked up and you know, unsightly premise and those types of things. We have made some great progress, I think. We've had, you know, on the unsightly side, our officers done an exceptional job, and on the dilapidated building side, this committee and council has really focused on these programs since day one. I too, you know, the case that the councillor was bringing up that I was aware of as well, and you know, you don't sometimes like these answers, but sometimes they become civil matters as well. They become disputes between, and we'd like to be able to solve all those with a bylaw, but I'm not sure that we can. I would, you know, I hope the councillor will, with his motion, consider, as the city manager suggested, I would like a teach-in. To understand the slate, because I don't want to leave the public with an impression that we have no tools, because that's not true. We have many tools. There may be gaps in those tools, and as Councillor McKenzie just said, if we can fill those gaps, we should. But as we know, we are a bit of a child of the province on many files too. So I would like that teach-in, and then if we can enhance these bylaws in some fashion, then I think that would be a smart way to go about it. I think the whole concept of fines, I know other municipalities, or I believe other municipalities have fines, so certainly I'd be interested in hearing about that. And I think that's it for me. So I guess, councillors, we turn it back to you to close us off. I think the ask is, would you consider that interim step for the teach-in and to have staff come back to us? If you could hit your button for me. There you go, you're on.
Thank you, Your Worship, and everyone for the comments. Right off the top, I respectfully disagree with both the city manager and Commissioner Hamilton. I'm aware of everything that we have on the books. I know that. I've been sitting here for nearly 8 years. I know. I've been through the teach-ins, many of them. I know. And so to go through a teach-in and tell us what we already know, I feel is a waste of time. I absolutely do. As far as enforcement goes, we can't enforce our bylaws now, as opposed to showing up at the door and saying, here's your fine and this is what it's going to cost you. I wish we could do that, but that's permissive legislation. We can't do that now. You walk your dog through a park without a leash. Nothing can be done to you. You don't pick up your dog crap. You are picking up people's dog crap. Nothing can be done about it. This is about voluntary compliance. That's the system that we currently have. It's not a St. John issue. It's a Fredericton one who won't give us more authority. We already know all this. 7.5 years doing this job. We should know this already. As far as the staff resources, I'm not saying that we should send our city bylaw enforcement officers around with a measuring tape and saying, your grass is too high. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is currently in this city, if you and I live side by side and you take care of your property and my alder bushes are crossing over your property line and damaging your car, you know what's on the books? 0. Go get a lawyer and go sue each other if you can't get along. That is wrong, in my opinion. That is absolutely wrong, and I don't need a teach-in. I don't need to know what we don't have, because that's the stuff that we don't have, because there is nothing on the books. So there is nothing that a citizen can do, because at least if there's some bylaws, like everything else, we can try to push voluntary compliance, because that's all we have under the current system. At least then there's something. So maybe when they get a letter from the city, maybe I will trim my bushes for you, Mr. Neighbor, so that I don't have to put up with this hassle. Because right now, sue me. You don't like it? Sue me. End of story. That's the current situation on the street out there. And that's wrong. And to go through a teach-in and to go through all the things about resources, We already know that. Write up the bylaw, get it right, put it on the books, and then if a citizen comes marching to City Hall looking for protection, at least we can say, well, we do have this on the books, we'll send somebody out, and hopefully we can get you a resolution. That's all this is. And as far as, you know, and it's about everything. Like, I mean, I just put a couple points in the bylaw. You know, there could be a lot more things that could be added to it. That's why I said a livability. It's not about unsightly premises, because that's a whole other kettle of fish. It's just about the simple things, the housekeeping items, so that when I take care of my property and the guy beside me doesn't, my property looks good and that property looks like crap. Try selling my house, because I got to live beside this guy, right? That's what I'm talking about, guys. Don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. So, no, I won't support referring it for a teach-in and for a whole, you know, the other things. I'm like, pass a bylaw or don't. That's how I
Okay.
feel about it.
Thank you, Counselor. So we're gonna move on here in a second, but I think maybe teaching is the wrong point. For me, I'm equally as passionate about all of those issues that are impacts neighbor to neighbor all over the city. But if we can't enforce it, we don't have the means to enforce it, we don't have the legislative ability to enforce it, then we're going to ask staff to go spend a few months and write a bylaw that we just send letters and folks rip them up and throw them in the garbage. That was all. Like, I just want to understand.
But that's how it is now.
Can we achieve the objective that we want to achieve?
Right, but that's how it is now, Your Worship.
Yeah.
So if that's the attitude, then take every bylaw in the books and throw them in the garbage. Because it's all about voluntary compliance for all of them.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're gonna move on here, folks. So
Thank
the motion is on the floor. The motion has been seconded.
Your Worship?
Yes.
I'm going to withdraw my second on that motion, and if it doesn't go through, I want to propose another motion with the change of wording.
Okay, so,
So can I second his motion?
yep.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? 1, 2, okay. And those opposed? Okay, thank you. And Councillor McKenzie?
So, Your Worship, the only reason I'm doing this is because of what the councilor just said. We can do this, but we don't have the power to enforce it, okay? So, I mean, there's no point in filling a gap just for the sake of having the words there, and you cannot go and find somebody because you don't have the legislative authority to do it. So what I want to do is I want to do this properly. I want to find out what we need to do to get that authority, why we don't have it if other jurisdictions do, and I want to get this resolved as soon as possible. So I'm going to just change that one word, as the city manager requested, and find out, if we can get some help from our MLAs on this issue, because it is it's a concerning issue for me, and it is stopping the growth of the city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moved. Second, Councillor Hickey. Thank you. Deputy, do you want to speak on this?
Well, I just don't think that stops the growth of the city. You know, I have an issue in East St. John, for instance, that's a retaining wall. It's on one person's property, the other people over here don't like it. Yes, it's falling down, there's nothing you can do. But you can't police people. The city cannot tell somebody exactly how to live their life or what to do and how they're going to conduct their property. You can't get that close to someone's personal property. If I'm a person that doesn't want to mow my lawn, I want to have my pail of garbage out there. If it's unsightly, then you have a bylaw. If it's not unsightly, then you can't enforce that. It's impossible. You know, it's like you can't educate the public all the time either. So you do your best, but you can't have a law and expect our staff, because what's the point of putting a bylaw in place if we can't police it? And the MLA's got better things to do than to run around, and there's, I challenge you to tell me a municipality that has a bylaw that tells me how I should keep my property up. If there's one, fine, copy it. But if not, no.
Okay.
I don't think there is such a thing.
So, folks, so we have a motion on the floor. We have some exceptional other presentations today, not diminishing this issue. It's incredibly important. Everybody agrees it's incredibly important. With this motion, staff will come back to try and solve and get at some of the objectives that were outlined today in terms of this being a massive. I'm asking this, I don't want to debate this again for another hour. We just had a good debate, and if we could just move forward. Councillor, was your mic left on, or did you want another comment?
No, I would
Okay.
just say that most of the bylaws we have now, we can't enforce in
So-
the sense of fines and that sort of thing.
Okay, so staff has heard that feedback for us today. I'm going to call the question on this motion, please. All those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Okay, two. Councillor Mackenzie's motion, yeah. Your motion was defeated. It was just a slight word change to refer this to the city manager to come back.
Well, the wording change that I had suggested is direct staff to explore a livability bylaw to have standards put in place for both residential and commercial properties to maintain their personal property. So it's not a given we will come back with a
Yeah.
bylaw, but we
So
will
just-
explore the possibilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the best we can get.
Okay, thank you. So that motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for the good debate, folks. And in terms, I've lost my place. Our next item is our presentation on our market study. And Mr. Willett, are you introducing? No, right to the presentation. Okay, thank you. I'll introduce Mr. Steve Carson, who is the CEO of Develop St. John, to give us a brief introduction, and off you go.
Yep, welcome. Thanks, Your Worship, members of the committee. As you know, when Develop St. John was formed, I guess about 21 months ago now, one of the first things, we've discussed this with the Growth Committee before, that we thought that was missing from our suite of tools to encourage more investment in our community was a really in-depth market analysis of the residential market. We all have some really good anecdotal stories about the strength of the market, but so we embarked upon last year, really, we believe for the first time in the city's history, a really in-depth market analysis of the residential market components. So I'm happy to be here today. Jeff Sears is going to kind of give the presentation, but I do want to acknowledge and recognize our board member, Jerry Lowe, who's joined us as well, and Christine Camon is here from our team as well. So I just wanted to give you, so we'll go through an overview of not only what the data shows, but more excitingly, how we've been using that data to really drive more investment and interest in investing in our community.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Steve, Your Worship, members of the committee. It's my pleasure to be here today to give you an overview of kind of the results of our residential market study. This was, as Steve was kind of alluding to, it was a foundational piece that really helped develop St. John to build a picture of what is our development landscape here, which also included looking at the state of available land, cost competitiveness, looking at our industrial park holdings and customer satisfaction as well. We initiated this work late last year, and we retained Turner Drake to help kind of lead the analysis that supported the creation of this document. I'm not going to go through all these study goals, but at a high level, what we wanted to achieve was to have a detailed analysis of the housing market and where we thought it was going, and also to look at what are some of our key emerging opportunities with a specific focus on the opportunity that everyone can sense in the Uptown and the Central Peninsula. We also wanted to have good sales materials and good sales information for our organization as well as our colleagues in the city and in the private sector. And we wanted to engage local developers as well as developers from out of town to get their thoughts. Overall, this product was presented to our board in late March of 2019 and was finalized shortly after. It's a pretty thorough analysis. It's over a 100-page document. So often what we do is we bring out the highlights, the projections. It has a very, very detailed breakdown. It looks at recent trends, and it provides us with customizable marketing materials as well. And kind of the meat of it is really projections for housing demand for the next 10 years. So in terms of timeline, just going to speak very quickly to this. We initiated the process in late 2018, retaining Turner Drake. A lot of that analysis happened over a 2 to 3 month period. We had our first draft in February. Our board saw it in March, and we've been actively using it since March. And we're excited here to kind of bring out some of that data publicly to the Growth Committee here today. So in terms of how we've been actively using this data, Our first process really is using it as sales materials. It's very critical having this data to get our sales team in the door with developers to initiate meetings. And for the first number of months, it was very strategically used for that. We also have some pamphlet materials that have been produced from it that I think Christine will hand out. And it plays well into creating customizable sheets because every project is going to be different and they'll be looking at different markets. In addition, this has helped us support builders, developers in project planning as well as our own organizational planning. And overall, I'd say it was a very good news story for the city in terms of where we could be heading. So to date as an organization, we've used this material with about 80 to 100 builders, developers, brokers, and realtors. And so far, it's led us to discussions and planning on a potential roughly 1,500 plus units with a number of private developers. Not all of these are public yet. Some of them, we've had the first few projects coming forward this year. If that were all those units were completed, it'd be in the magnitude of about $130 million in tax base and $2.5 million in tax revenue a year. So those hopefully will be completed over time here in the next number of years, and we'll also continue to use it to encourage more projects. Some of the first few projects that kind of were initiated or supported through this data were projects that you've seen recently, like the Telegraph, like Calabria Estates, some of the residential being pitched at East Point, and a project at Heatherway as well. And we've got a number of other projects that hopefully we'll be kind of bringing forward here later this year and early next year. In terms of the contents and the findings within the document, I would say there's a few really key highlights. It's a thick document, so I'm just going to kind of discuss some of the most important and critical findings for the city. The first of which is that we're growing again, and it's expected to continue. So in terms of the economic indicators, things have been improving, particularly the last 3 to 4 years. So unemployment rates are down, participation rates are up, as well as overall employment is up. We've kind of been working with a couple of economics consultants with both ourselves and with our colleagues on the 10th floor of City Hall. And in terms of where they project household growth and population growth to go over the next 10 years, it's a positive news story. A number of key things will drive that. In particular, if we can continue steady economic growth like we have been the last few years, and additionally, that being supported by a large proportion of our workforce hitting retirement years, backfilling those positions in addition to that steady growth will drive a lot of job openings and potential for population growth. So based off of that, the market study does project roughly over the next 10 years the potential in the greater St. John region, somewhere between 5,500 and 8,500 new units to be constructed of various different housing types. And the positive news story from that is that for one of the first times in kind of recent memory, there's a really good probability or possibility for a majority share of those units to be captured in the city, as opposed to some of the outlying areas. And kind of jumping to the next part of this presentation is because we've got some new strengths that we really haven't had to our advantage as a community in the last number of years. That'll be critical for us in driving things forward. The first, immigration and migration. With labor shortages, expected net natural growth at pretty flat levels, immigration is going to drive growth not just in St. John, not just in New Brunswick, but in Canada as a whole as well. And we've already started to see that. We've seen growth happening in the last few years. We've seen growth in number of immigrants in St. John, and our immigration team on the 10th floor is doing a great job and helping to make sure that growth is steady and continues. But the positive note for the city is that roughly 80% of new immigrants tend to settle in the city rather than the outlying areas. So these maps that our consultant produced show generally hotspots of where different different ethnicities are settling once they immigrate to the city of St. John. As you can see, it's predominantly within St. John, a lot of it in Milledgeville on the west side and some in the Central Peninsula. And we've seen that already starting to impact new construction, particularly in the apartment, the rental unit market, which is, you can see that kind of, that green line kind of tracking up the last few years. The second kind of key advantage that we're seeing and will continue for a number of years is that the baby boomers are downsizing. So compared to the previous generation who tended to try and age in their home as long as they could, baby boomers are trying to get out of that big home and into a smaller, more efficient unit. And the positive news story there is that, generally speaking, apartments are typically St. John's strength. So 9 out of 10 renters live in the city of St. John. So 90%, it's quite strong, although it does not necessarily guarantee that that ratio will be the same moving forward. We do have a lot of the amenities, and we've got a lot of the stock that helps to support that, as well as the neighborhoods that create that sense of place that really encourage people to move into these multi-unit buildings. So we've seen in the last 5 years, we've seen the vacancy rate decline significantly for new product, so newly developed, and that's a kind of a widely used term. It means anything that's been built in the last 20 years in St. John. The vacancy rate now is at 0.5%. We've seen vacancy rates decline from 12% to 3% in the last 5 years, which is really demonstrating the strength of that market. The other strength, and I think everyone is very familiar with this one, is the demand for urban living. Very strong. This was one that I think what was most exciting about this process was we know a lot of people understand and see the strength of urban living and how much interest there is in this market here. Through this process, our consultants also spoke to developers in Halifax and other areas of Atlantic Canada. And the positive thing is the larger developers outside of New Brunswick seem to get that and know that that's going on. So it's not, what was our best kept secret isn't really our best kept secret anymore. It's pretty widespread in terms of the potential of Uptown St. John, so, and the Central Peninsula. So the projections in terms of where they think that demand could go for the Central Peninsula over the next decade is upwards to about 1,200 units. So that's about 120 units a year, and there is potential. You know, if we start to land some of these catalytic projects like the Fundy Quay, like the new school for the Central Peninsula, that we could try and push that further by creating more demand and more interest in our neighborhoods in St. John. So overall, it's a positive news story. We've got a lot of strengths that we didn't have in the past that we can use to enhance our share of new development and help to encourage more growth in our city.
Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Sear. Questions, comments, committee? No? Okay, I'll make a couple. Oh, sorry, Councillor McKenzie. Sorry, I didn't see your light.
That's okay, I was late putting it on. This is a phenomenal study. It really speaks positive to St. John, and I'm really pleased that you got it done. I can imagine how useful it is in getting deals done, because it tells the developers everything they need to know. So I just want to, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment. Congratulations on the team for doing this, and I think it's probably one of the most positive documents we've seen in a long time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. No, okay. Just a couple of comments, Mr. Sear. I'm familiar with the report, of course, because I serve on the board as well. But as the councillor just made the comments, I agree. We are at a really, we have great opportunities ahead of us here in terms of some of the demographic changes. I'm one of those folks, moved from the west side to Uptown. Enjoying that lifestyle, did so because I don't want to mow my lawn anymore and I don't want to shovel driveways and I want to walk to work. So, but in terms of attracting investment to the city, I think this, it's not just us saying there's great opportunities, it's being able to back that up with hard data, which is how most informed developers and investors make their decisions. They want to see this type of information. So again, congratulations to the whole team at Develop St. John. And you know, one of your opening slides, Mr. Sear, you know, we're talking today about the residential marketing study. We've also been working on the land inventory system, also been working on a cost competitive analysis, also been working on the Lorneville industrial market sounding, also working on customer service surveys and enhancements, and also working on affordable neighborhood fund, the catalytic projects like the Fundy Key, the new school in the South End, all of this, most of these projects working in collaboration, some fashion, with city departments like growth and development. So I feel really good that this council said growth mattered. The roadmap for smart growth, population growth strategy, shook up our economic development framework. Develop St. John is, a little more than a year old. This type of work that's been done, the type of projects that you have in the pipeline, and the fact that not only to help and inform local developers and investors, but also to attract investors from away, which is something that I think we need. And I've said often, I think there's the landscape is very, very positive here for investors to come to St. John. I think we have a high level of demand. I think this report shows that. There's a lot of very positive trends, and I'm just reminded in closing of a meeting I was having. It was a while back now, but I was having a meeting with investors from Toronto, and Steve and the crew, your team had met. They just wanted to come and have a quick coffee, and I just said, why are you in St. John? They said, because many of the conditions are better in St. John, New Brunswick than they are in Toronto. So we've got a lot to celebrate here in terms of the investment landscape and the potential and the growth opportunities for us. We just need to keep doing what we're doing and be bold and willing to push ourselves to a new level if that's what it takes. So I really thank you for your presentation today. It was excellent. Okay, can I have a receive and file, please, committee? Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And our last item for today is we have a CCAN Uptown presentation from Mr. Fogan. Are we going straight to Mr. Fogan? Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Fogan. When you're ready, off you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll start off by saying your finance and administrative team have been looking for a way to contribute to growth and also to support your neighborhood plan. So we're left with the question is how can we do that? Well, I think we found a way that also helps fill a gap that we've identified as well. So we think this plan supports uptown growth, supports our St. John value proposition, some of the urban living we just talked about, and will yield a net positive return for the city within a year. So it's not a long-term payback, but a short-term. And we think with the gap, I think we can lead to some better outcomes, better cost control and cost avoidance. And I'll take you through that. We've been working with growth and development and also Uptown St. John on this idea. So I'll start off with the ask. It's up there on the screen, but we're asking for a contribution from growth reserve to pay for some material cost. We're looking to accept support from Uptown St. John for towards the CCAN washroom material cost of approximately $33,000, and support for a one-year pilot project to employ an Uptown program manager and reevaluate the opportunity at this time next year. So what is it that we're looking to do? We're looking to do a couple things. One is to build a CCAN bathroom slash bar. I guess the bar would be separate, but the CCAN bathroom. Drawing here on the slide, we would just manage the build and manage the deployment, which could be used for a variety of reasons. And it's partnered with Uptown St. John on this washroom. It's one of the things that they've told us repeatedly, that there's not enough washrooms for events or even during regular non-event days like cruise ships and such. So in this, for the considerations, Uptown St. John has tentatively offered to pay for the materials if this plan gets accepted here. They are also looking, they would help support it by cleaning it. It would be branded for the city of St. John and Uptown St. John. We would complete most of the labor in-house. And like I said, we can use it for all events, including even things such as EMO deployments, the search and rescue events. And it would reduce the city of St. John's cost of current rentals and could be in use all year round. This is just the quick financials on it, but roughly it's about $66,000 to build the CCAN washroom, about $33,000 in material, about $33,000 in labor. Like I said, mostly done in-house except for plumbing, and with the material tentatively donated by Uptown St. John. The second component is a CCAN bar. We're looking to RFP for a vendor partnership on this. This would normally be housed at the city market or at the port market for cruise ship days. Be branded City of St. John and also St. John Water, as we build in a water bottle filling station into it. And St. John Water would also help us with deployment of the CCAN bar. For an instance, on the bottom here, we said we'd use it for things like 506, Uptown Market, Uptown Sparkles, those types of events. This is a quick snapshot of the financials, which you can go through, but roughly it's about $34,000 to build the CCAN bar, about $19,000 in material cost. That relates to the ask from Growth Committee, and about $15,000 in labor, which is, again, mostly done in-house, or sorry, the ask from Growth Reserve. And we also estimate that within a year, we think these activities would create a gross profit of approximately $88,000, $90,000 a year within the first year. So the role, so in order to support this initiative, we'd like to give a trial run to an Uptown program manager. So on the next few slides, I've put together what this program manager would do. So to include activities like public events, street closures, and in support of the neighborhood plan, creating a pedestrian street. So this role would also work with growth and development to revamp the way the street closures, parades, and events get approved, and the administration and support and cost recovery behind those events. And it serves as that one point of contact for those events for Uptown. We also identified that we have a gap here with in contract management that is, we think, has led to some increased costs, but there's also an opportunity here to generate some revenue, recover costs, and some cost avoidance in the future with their current contracts. Some of these contracts right now are not well managed, haven't been in the past, but we think there's an opportunity here to, like I said, to avoid some costs in the future, but also recover some, create some new revenue from some of these activities. Also, this role would support the night market. I think the night market this past year, I don't want to put a judgment on it because I was kind of helped with it, but I think it was successful, so I'll say that. But there were thousands of people through, and it has been a business incubator as well. We saw things like Ethel and Mary's. Actually, there's an article in the paper today about a 17-year-old who started a new business, Ville Bakery. So we think the night market has been successful for some of those reasons. And this role would help support that and continue it. Also, our city market, we're looking to push the hours. I think we have some increased demand from Uptown Living to have expanded hours here. And currently in place, you have one market manager. It's becoming increasingly more difficult to ask that one person to manage an operation that's moving to 12-hour days, and some days, and some weeks, seven days a week. We do like to give vacation, and every now and again somebody has to take a lunch hour. So it's becoming increasingly more difficult to properly manage the city market with just one management. So this role would also fill that gap. We'd also like to work with the port. The port has expressed a willingness to have a cruise ship market more permanent rather than just the tent that you see here in the photo. So we envision this position will help develop that, and also probably develop some other business opportunity on the port property. Again, with the CCANs being deployed for cruise ship days, you may see that as an incubator, and that's one thing we'd like to push. Finally, Nancy Tissington did want to be here today, but she didn't. She can't. She's out of town. But she did want to say that she's supportive of this. We've worked with her on this development as well, and some of these things fill gaps that they have identified. But it does help build our current relationship with them. There are a couple other minor roles in the marketing and promotion. This role would also fill some of that gap that we think we can continue to build some of our previous success. This next slide just has the summary of all those previous events. I'm not going to go through it. I've kind of taken through one by one. And in this slide, we just projected what our net benefit would be. And we think within 1 year, I think we're going to have a net benefit back to the city of $33,000 after expenses. Now, this doesn't include if we have other events as well. It also doesn't include success on contract management. Some of those pieces of contract management, if we had been, or if we could do contract management better in the future, I think it could lead to hundreds of thousands of other cost avoidance or cost recovery or new revenues. So we haven't included those figures here, or that figure here, because it's not really realized until we do see that. So in summary, we're looking for support from the growth reserve for $19,000 towards the material for the CCAM bar. We're looking to accept support from Uptown St. John towards the CCAN washroom material cost of approximately $33,000. And we're looking for support to try this 1-year pilot project and to employ an Uptown program manager and reevaluate in October 2020.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fogan. Councillor Strobridge, okay. Did you have a comment? Yeah.
I just have questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Is now the right
Yes,
time?
please. Yeah.
The Uptown Program Manager, how much is the salary going to be for that person?
We did include salary in this. If you look down the line, I think we have it as a base salary, or cost of that position about $65,000.
Plus, is that a person that's hired through a temporary agency, or is there benefits with that? Are they going to the pension plan, sick time, et cetera?
No, this would not be a permanent position. This is a casual contract position.
And that would come out of whose budget? The growth budget to pay that salary for the year?
No, it would come out of our administrative services area. So we again see this as we'd keep this running total, this projected income expenses, we'd keep this separate. We think it is a net positive return back even with that salary, but we would do that accounting completely separate.
Who does all the work now? Who's doing it?
Well, we have employed a contract, a casual position for the Uptown market, but a lot of this is not getting done right now. And what we view here is that there's opportunities for cost recovery, and we need some of that horsepower in order to be able to do that.
So if it's not getting done now, then how is all this stuff taking place that you're listing up here if it's not already getting done?
No, sorry for clarification. I get some of those events are taking place, but some of the opportunities we have to generate cost recovery are not happening.
Okay.
So for example, there may be a street closure, which the city supports, but we don't have any we're not currently developing any cost recovery for those type of events.
To the city manager, you had told us that there was a hiring restriction put in place, and unless you saw it as absolutely necessary, you would not be recommending to us to hire new people at this time. Is this someone that you approve of?
Oh, sorry. Okay, hit your button, should work. There you go.
Your worship, through you to the council, short answer is yes. The hiring restriction is for regular full-time employees, people that we would incur all of the cost plus the longer-term pension considerations, et cetera. This is a casual 1-year pilot project. If you recall, some months ago, we identified that we're having a serious challenge just with our street events in terms of properly coordinating them, getting the necessary approvals in place, the policing, the cleanup there afterwards, et cetera. And this position alone would help tremendously there. We've talked about in the 60-plus initiatives for revenue generation, the idea of imposing event levy fees, et cetera. This position would take a look at doing that. So we believe that this position will be funded just from the work that it does. And because it is only a casual position for 1 year, to see if we're right, I am absolutely supportive of this.
I don't know if I am or not, to be honest with you. I just think it's a bad time to be taking new people on, considering our structural deficit. And, you know, as we talk about all the possible cutbacks and possible, ultimately is going to result in cutting back of personnel, I would think, to go along with it. The future council that's coming in next year is going to have quite a big mountain to climb when they first walk in this door. But going to the CCAN, who's going to bring the CCAN to the different events and set it up and then take it back?
Folks, I'm just going to turn your mics off, and then I'll come back around because I can't get we punched Mr. Fogan's mic out. So there you go. Mr. Fogan.
Thank you, through your worship.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we punched you.
That's all right. Sometimes you don't need to hear from me. There's a couple different components. One, the deployment, the physical deployment is actually just done by a tow truck, and we may be able to even do it with our new roll-on, roll-off vehicles. So we've talked to places like Moosehead and other CCANs that get deployed, and it's very economical to relocate. In order to relocate, one of the things of the CCAN bar, for example, has a water filling station that's attached to it. So some of the pieces behind that, St. John Water has said they'll pay for that installation of the filling station first off, but there's some regulations behind where it can go, how the hose has to be sanitized, and all the hookups. And St. John Water would help us with that piece as well. So what this position would do, it would create the licenses, monitor the revenue, the coordination and deployment of this, notify St. John Water when we want to relocate it. Again, this is one of the areas where we think there's a revenue opportunity here to deploy City of St. John branded bar and CCANs to different locations.
So we'll be moving it to and from the different locations?
Yeah, it would either be us or a contractor like Loyalist Towing, that kind of. It can be moved with a tow truck or with our own roll-on, roll-off trucks.
And if I am an event and I want that CCAN bar and washroom set up brought to my event, is it free or is there a fee for it?
No, depending on how it's structured. So if we're visioning right now that if it's an event that occurs on a city street or a city-owned property, that in that license that we grant you permission in order to have that event, that our bar and washroom comes with it. So, and we generate the revenue.
So the cost associated for us to bring it to you is going to just be put in with your permit?
That's true, yes.
Okay.
So if somebody wanted to take it on their own and not have us, then we would absolutely charge them for it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy?
Oh, thank you. Well, I have a few questions, Ian. So you said the Uptown Program Manager would be $65,000? I hate not talking to you face to face.
That's okay.
You say the salary would be $65,000?
Including, we put that cost as the cost of supporting that employment, yes.
See, I like the concept of what we may be thinking here, but I don't see any way the city's going to make money on this, so I don't want to be misleading. First of all, we have a deficit at City Market. We've had it for years. I love the City Market, and everybody else does too, and we're going to continue on, but it doesn't make money for us. The other thing, have we gone to every merchant in the City Market, and do they know that we might be opening 7 days a week, 12 hours a day?
No, well, we have, I wouldn't say we've gone personally to everyone. So we have marketing meetings, or they have merchant meetings fairly regular. And it's been brought up before, actually. This last one, there was a desire from some of the tenants to open during Uptown Sparkles, for example. But some of them are seeing with the activity, whether it be around cruise ships, whether it be these activities on, so we have the night market on Thursday night with, they're seeing some of these events and they're.
Were we open this past Sunday?
We were open on Monday, yes.
Yes. Well, anyway, I see that as a little bit of a problem because most of the merchants in the City Market or the vendors are family. And, to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, big deal. It's a hard job for them. The thing I see around this person, like the night market, and I'm not sure if we made any money on the night market. It's a wonderful thing to have, no question. But I would say probably if I was to look at the if I had access to the money, they probably cost the city money more than they made money, but I don't know that for sure. But this uptown person, it's a great concept, but we've got other events. We can't just say that uptown person, I mean, there's all kinds of events that the city does that have big crowds uptown, like the Santa Claus Parade, like the Canada Day celebrations. You know, we had a meeting just this last week with Canada Day, and we've depended on Market Square for the last 20 years. Well, no more. So who's going to run Canada Day? And who's going to, you know, right now we have someone from the west side doing the Santa Claus Parade. So if you're going to look at events in the uptown, I don't think it's fair that the city taxpayers would have a project manager that didn't take in all the events, because that's part of the role of Uptown St. John, even though that they got out of that. They do this Uptown Sparkles, but they don't do the other events that attract just as many people. You get thousands of people uptown for Canada Day. We depended on Market Square, that's finished. We don't know who's going to chair up Canada Day right now. And these events cannot pay for license fees, you know. That sea can, why do you call a sea can anyway? What is it, a container?
Yeah, a sea container, yes.
It should be to all events, not just Uptown Sparkles and the night market and the Moonlight Bazaar, or whatever you call it. It has to go to the other events too, because all the kids come uptown for Santa Claus coming up in a few weeks. They don't have any money to buy that little thing to have a washroom, so if we're going to have it, we're going to have it for everybody.
Yeah, no, I would like to clarify.
You're not going to make money. You're going to help the uptown develop more events.
Right, so I would like to clarify a couple points. It is for deployment at all uptown events. That is, it's not just strictly those ones I listed. That's, I think I said other events, but it is in support of those.
If we're going to get into this, if we're going to get into it as a city, and you're going to take on events, you got a lot of work to do, because, you know, events don't just happen. You think they do. The Canada Day celebration, nobody wants to take it on as the chair, because Market Square is changing their business plan, and they're not going to be able to just provide everything. So I just have a concern that we're doing what we want to do, but we're not think of the whole uptown and what everybody else has done for years free.
City manager, you want to jump in?
If I may, Your Worship, I just need to clarify one point about this uptown manager. There is absolutely no intent to take over organizing all of the events that occur within the city of St. John. We must, as a community, rely on volunteers and volunteer organizations to run a large number of our events. However, there are areas where we believe that we can invest a little bit of time and effort through one person and reap great dividends. For example, can we work with the port to take over the operation of their market, their port market, or to assist them with the operation of that port market and seek a revenue from it? There are countless opportunities like that to look at, but we should not kid ourselves. This one person is not going to take over event planning for the city of St. John. It's just not possible.
So has the port, may I ask, has the port already agreed that this person could take over their sales, their vendors, which I'm assuming they do very well down there, I've been there, and take that over, and if there's any profit that comes to the city?
No, we have not gotten into any of that level of detail with any of the organizations. Have I spoken to the port about somehow combining our efforts to run markets in this city? Absolutely, we have had those discussions. We don't have any of the details yet. We believe that this uptown manager, based on some of the examples of some of the anticipated incomes you see here, that uptown manager will pay for his worth. And it's a little bit under the motto of you got to spend some money to make some money. Well, if we spend a bit of money to have an uptown manager, we should be able to make some money. And that's the notion behind this, but it is not to take over events in St. John.
But my only concern is, or you know, one of my concerns is, it's great, I like the idea, but you know, it's not fair for me or anyone else to sit around this table and say, well, some events are out here on their own and they have to do their own, but here we are gonna have the city, and because it's not our money, it's taxpayers' money. And that money is gonna pay for a person, doesn't matter who it is, to do certain events. It's just example, we paid for the night market. Well, fine, wonderful. Then you pay for Canada Day over here too. You know, because you can't choose. You can't just own certain events and not others, because these are public events that the public goes to, they come to our uptown. And we don't reward any of our volunteers, and quite frankly, we hardly say thank you to them, quite frankly, you know. So I like this, but I'm concerned about what we're doing, because once the city takes over something, then you're gonna have it. You're gonna own it. And it's not fair to say, well, some events we're gonna do, and other events, they just have to sink or swim on their own, because they're important too.
Yeah, so I think it's a broader, so I mean, I guess if there's a couple of conversations there.
Mayor, quite frankly, you're not gonna make money on it. We're not making money on this. So these events are big operations.
Yeah.
You can give me the sheet of the night market and tell me we made money. It's not whether we made money, it's that we're providing an entertainment or something for people to go to. And I understand that, and we need to have things for people to go to. But the city cannot just support some people's events because they want to, and other events swim or sing. That's not fair.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Deputy. Councillor McKenzie?
If I might, just one point of clarification, it's not, we're looking to monetize some of these events for the city, not necessarily that we're looking to, like the night market, for example, if we have the Seacan bar there and we're not renting porta potties, we think that will be a positive moneymaker. The other events like Moonlight Bazaar or Canada Day Parade or whoever else, we're not looking to take them over. We're looking to make sure we recover cost and we have some revenue stream from those events occurring. Not that we're looking to take them over. We're just
No, I
looking
know
to
you don't want to take them over.
insert.
They don't make money.
Yeah.
They're just events that bring people in.
I think there's a broader, I mean, we get to a bigger global discussion. I mean, I guess for a separate discussion on Canada Day, and the Hardman Group was, leading the charge there with a bunch of other volunteers. I mean, I guess that's a separate discussion. We pay $2 million a year in common area fees to the Hardman Group. They played a key role in hosting Canada Day and investing in Canada Day.
They did.
They did, and we need to have that conversation, because we invest $2 million a year in common space leases and other leases, and we're a major client. And we need to have a separate discussion about how Canada Day is going to move forward. But we want the public to know Canada Day is not canceled in St. John, New Brunswick. We just want the public to know
As
that.
long
So-
as we have the volunteers.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
a laughing matter to me.
No, it's
Because
not,
we
no.
don't say thank you to people. We want them to do it
I say
free.
thank you,
And,
Deputy, 1,000 times a
no,
week.
And
Yeah. Anyway, respectfully,
And this is
we've
whole
gotten
different-
way off track, folks. Let's get back on track to the item that we
But
have
this is very
on the table here today. If we have to have a separate discussion, we have an Arts and Culture Board. We have Ms. Wilcott in the audience. We have lots of folks in Growth and Community Development. We have Mr. Fogan. We can have a separate discussion about Canada Day and all the other events that we have going on. Councillor McKenzie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, if we could stay focused, we could go a long way. This is not about organizing one event but not organizing another. It's got nothing to do with the organization of events. This is a business opportunity where we can get a return on our investment and have a revenue generation. This is outside the box thinking. This happens everywhere. Companies make big money doing this. And if the city of St. John has the opportunity to do it, I think they should do it. That's what we want to do. We want to start making some money on these things. I wouldn't limit it to uptown. I mean, if you've got a ball game going on the west side and that unit's not doing anything, I say get it over there. Fill it up. Or the east side, if there's an event going on at Exhibition Park and you can be nearby, you'd have to check with the MLA, I'm sure, but, I think that's what we have to do. And if we do it for a pilot project for the first year and we get a good return on our investment, we'd be crazy not to do it the next year. If it doesn't do what we think it's going to do, okay, we poke ourselves or whatever. I think we got to stop thinking of all the downsides of these things and start looking at why people do it and make a living off of doing it. and why we can't do it too. You know, so I concerned too, because, you know, you talk about keeping the market open, you got one guy over there, you know, and, you know, talk about work-life balance. You can't have them there 7 days a week, you know, 12 hours a day. At least if you have a business there and you've got employees, you can schedule them so that, you know, not everybody's working the same time. I say we should go for it and get some partners on side. I'm sure that there's other logos that can go on that, you know, if we can make a go of it. But we got to think positive on this. I think this is a good opportunity, and I think it's one that I'll be supporting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a recommendation that direct the $19,000 from the growth reserve towards the building of the CCAN containers, support a one-year trial of hiring an Uptown program manager, and thirdly, accept the support offered from Uptown St. John for materials costs towards the washroom for approximately $33,000. So that's the recommendation that's on the floor. Excuse me, that's the recommendation that's been made. No one has moved or seconded that recommendation. Move it, okay. Do we have a seconder? I'll second it. Okay, thank you, Councillor Strobridge.
I'm all for the CCAN idea. I think that's cheap. It's good to go if you can, you know, if it's wanted and it's needed. It was like the green clean machine back many years ago. I book that every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. I think that's a great idea. The CCAN issue I have full support for. Hiring somebody new at this point in time, I don't think that sends the right message at all. I don't think that sends the right message to our already employees who are being told about upcoming structural deficits and possible cutbacks, including their own jobs may be on the line. I understand you got to spend money to make money. That's something that I agree with too. But I don't think this is the right time to be hiring somebody new. You know, it may pay for itself. I mean, or it may not. And if somebody would have said to me, well, we're losing opportunities because we don't have enough resources to put them in place, that would be a different story. But everything that this person's job description that's been presented to me today, it's already being done. Those you know, it's already being done. Those events are still happening.
Just a point of clarity on that, Councillor, because that's not the impression I was left with. We've got a guy like Mr. Fogan who's doing his day job and then trying to manage these things off the side of his desk. That's my so on the point, Mr. Fogan or city manager, on these are already being done. Is that the case, or?
So when you look down some of the areas, for example, the events are occurring. Definitely, the events are occurring. We're not the organizer; they're occurring. What we're saying is that in order to monetize for us, we really need somebody to coordinate that so we can monetize. So, for example, when a food truck shows up unexpected at one of our events and they haven't paid us to locate, their fee or anything to locate on our property, we don't have anybody who's going out there and doing that. It's just happening. They're packing up the next day, next 2 days, and they're off. We haven't recovered anything. When there's a street closure, the event happens. Again, it wraps up the next day. We're left with cleaning it up or anything else that we need to do to support. We haven't put, there's no recovery fee. We haven't monetized that event and that's what part of this deployment of these CCANs will do, is help monetize those events. Things like, again, any festival that occurs in our property or events in other parts of the city. I agree with Councillor McKenzie that if it's not being used, we put it elsewhere. But so some of these things are happening. What we're not doing is we're not recovering fees associated with it because we don't have the time or the manpower to do it. Other things that we've missed out on, for example, we haven't had good contract management of some of our larger uptown contracts. Things like Market Square. It's actually about $2.4 million that we contribute to common area cost. And do we have anybody? If we were in a private organization, this is just in my humble opinion, but if we were in a private organization, we would have somebody assigned to that size of a contract. That would be their full-time role. Stop. But we don't have anybody assigned to that. We don't have the capacity. So what we're saying is we'd like to at least try to add it into this so we can try to manage those costs better.
If I send an email to culturalaffairs@stjohn.ca, who am I getting and what's that person's job role? Could we not put all this in there?
City Manager, 1 second. Sorry, I'm gonna just turn your mic off, Deputy, and we'll come back to you, City Manager. You're not on. Yeah. There you go.
There is, and I am the city manager who manages the workload of our employees. There is no capacity within our city staff right now to take on the entrepreneurship that would be required behind some of these initiatives to start generating more money. We simply do not have the capacity. We have a singular market manager who looks after our market area, and that's it. And anything else that we have been doing including the entire organization of the night market, was done, I'll use the mayor's expression, on the side of their desks, interfering with where their other work should be. We have a work plan for the city that will not be accomplished if we start to have it to divert people to do some of the stuff that has been suggested for this one contracted position that has nothing to do with our regular employees. It would be like contracting out garbage removal or whatever we choose to contract out. It is a contracted position for 1 year as a trial to see if this position generates us money. If it does not, we walk away from it. If it does, we reinforce it. But I cannot imagine anyone on the city staff who could undertake the shopping list of things that we have on this slide that this one additional contracted position would do for us for a year. Even just organizing the CCAN and moving it around from place to place. There's nobody on the staff right now who could take that on without having an adverse effect on our overall work plan.
Okay, just for context, again, we're having sort of great debate. I want to make a few comments too. But we're really deciding, do we believe this idea is worthy even of a referral to Greater Council? That's really, we can refer it, we can either pass this recommendation or vote it down. We're really trying to say, does this go to a bigger, Councillor, did you, anything else, or can I just jump in?
No, I'm done, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll come to you, Deputy. I just want to make a couple of comments. First of all, in a way, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck here, but we're having more vibrant discussion here over $60,000 than I think we did over $162 million the other night, and the restructuring that we need to have and the greater budget challenges that we have. I'm glad to see it, and it is difficult. Because for me, it's Councillor Strobridge and others have brought up. We don't know exactly how we're going to deal with our deficit. We've got 60 ideas. That's caused all kinds of public discussion. We're going to continue that discussion tonight at a town hall. But for me, what it is. And I didn't get to say it the other night at council, I think we can't be afraid to we can't lump everything in one bucket. I think we have to continue to somehow invest in vibrancy and quality of life and arts and culture and address these issues. So that's how I'm trying to rationalize it. And in the same breath, I agree. I mean, I think we have to look at our staffing levels. Is this net budget neutral, or is this going to be an increase to budgets? If we're managing these dollars, or you are a city manager within the bucket of dollars that you have, and if council decides your bucket of money next year is going to be less, then our expectation should be that you manage that to the best of your ability. I like the ideas. A trial, I think, is a good way. It's a contract position. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I can tell you that when you're out at those events, whether it be uptown or anywhere else in the city, people don't complain when they're happy when they're out at those types of events. They're loving their city. They're out at a festival. I think these are innovative ideas to be able to monetize some kind of little bar unit to try it, and just the operational items of having some increased capacity around washrooms. So I think it's worth a trial, but I think what you're hearing from committee, city manager, is there's a lot of angst here on how we're going to manage through these and the optics of some of these projects. So I think how we position them to the public, I think, is incredibly important. So partnerships, I love the partnership, by the way. I mean, yet again, Uptown St. John is saying, hey, here's $33,000. We'll partner with you. I think there is a need. On the streamlining, which is growth, I was speaking to a proponent here this summer, and it wasn't a criticism, it was feedback. They work in other cities around the country, and they were able to get the permits they needed in a few days or a week, and trying to get the permits here. Not a criticism, just a recognition that we're trying to do so many other things that the community event permit that they wanted took weeks and weeks and weeks to get it done. So I think what you're saying is let's put someone on this to quarterback these types of events for a bit. You've already answered about redeploying. Yeah, so look, I think because we may or may not support an idea like this doesn't mean that we don't have some other budget woes that we must fix and work through. It is that we have to grow. We have to continue to be vibrant. We have to find a way to get through these next couple of years to get to the brighter sunshine. So, and all the other issues that were mentioned, I think they're real, and we should address them in a separate discussion out of here. So, sorry, thank you for hearing me out. So we have a recommendation. It's on the floor. Deputy, you had your light on. Did you?
Well, it's just that we can't talk both ways. We have budget concerns. The city has to grow. You know, this is, even though St. John is going to partner with us, we're still paying the big cost. And whether it's 60,000 or whether it's 70,000, a volunteer can do the same thing. That's what we lived on for years in this city, and every other city does it too. And I just, you know, if you want to take the little sea can over to West Side to the ball game, I'm going to tell you who's going to take it. Local 18 is going to take it, and they might be on overtime because they might not be working that night. And so it's a great thing if we have tons of money. I want the city to grow too, but you can't be always talking budget if over here you want to spend money, because the public gets mixed up. They can't figure that out. And, you know, we're talking money. We can do this on a volunteer basis. We got tons of volunteers. We don't need to spend $65,000 for cash. And the thing is to say that that person is going to deal with the contracts down at Marcus Square. You must have thought I was born tomorrow, because Marcus Square contract is with Hardman Group. And somebody on staff looks after it. And, you know, we're in it for the next 100 years. So anyway, I'm not saying any more because we're just talking out of both sides of our mouth.
Okay, so folks, I think we just had, thank you, Deputy, we've had both a growth committee meeting and a finance committee meeting all in the same room. So I'd ask that for that same kind of vigor as we go to tackle our budget challenges and woes, and you know how I feel, I think, about it. I want that same vigor. We have to grow. The discussion today was about a growth initiative. I agree there's all those other challenges, but let's bring that same vigor when we're talking about our finances next time as well. So, okay, so we have the recommendation on the floor. That is as written, to send it off to council for a broader debate at council. And I'll call the question. So all those in... it's the recommendation but our mechanism, right, is to go from here to council with a recommendation, if you will. We're recommending that council debates this item now at a broader debate. I read the recommendation, so it's so
That would be for us to recommend.
Yeah, but again, just help me from a governance perspective, Phil, where all this committee and all finance committee can do is recommend something to broader council for debate and final say. Yeah. So we're really debating whether we want to send this to council or not for a broader debate. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All right. And those opposed, if any? Okay, thank you, Deputy. Okay, thank you very much. I think that was the last item. Okay, so just say, look, another lively growth committee meeting again today, but a lot of great news out of today's meeting. You know, we started out with, with G. Lee, who came and just shared how he fell in love with St. John as a student. And interestingly, he did mention in his presentation that his father was the mayor of a small town. I'm not sure if you caught that, a small town in China of 1 million people. And they've chosen what was the best thing his father ever did for G was to send him to St. John, New Brunswick to take his schooling. And so lots of very positive things. Develop St. John, the market study, that's very positive. Like we're talking and living and breathing growth every day. People, jobs, growing the tax base. So we should be very proud of the work that's happening. So thank you very much, everybody. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. All those in favor? Great. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Have a great day.